coming into the cannabis industry, it was literally drinking from a fire hose. Every day was something new. And I still consider that to be true. We have new regulations going out at the state level, at least monthly. It's not what feels like weekly. So these operators are having to constantly evolve and determine how to properly ensure and stay within their state guidelines, make sure that they're managing risks on their end outside of insurance. And I think that AlphaRoot and other cannabis-specific insurance retailers are providing a huge service to this industry just because, I don't know, we've done program reviews for cannabis companies, and on the first review, you see a cannabis exclusion on the policy. And so I think a huge risk to cannabis operators are working with insurers and retailers that don't understand their risk. And so that's a gap that we're here to fill.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Cannabis Accounting Podcast. Today, I have with me my friend Griffin Basden, the Senior Client Manager at AlphaRoot. Griffin, if for those who don't know about AlphaRoot or yourself, if you want to introduce yourself and AlphaRoot to catch people up to speed.
I'd love to. Thanks for having me. So I'm Griffin. I've been working at AlphaRoot for about 4 years now, and we are a cannabis-specific insurance retailer. So we work really closely with cannabis brands, psychedelic brands, hemp brands, operations that are on the edge of what we would consider the normal standard market. And so I've been at AlphaRoot for about 4 years. I started in the insurance industry and then was pulled towards a more highly specialized field in insurance for cannabis companies. And it's been such a joy. It's been so fun getting to work with cannabis founders and people like yourself.
Nice. All right. So on the insurance side of the cannabis industry, obviously near and dear to my heart as a fellow professional service provider to this industry. And yeah, it's not taking something that is alive and well outside of the cannabis industry. It's been around for hundreds of years. So, we're not really reinventing the wheel for these cannabis companies, but we are providing a ton of value and insight and bespoke solutions to this bespoke industry. So you had mentioned that you did insurance before getting into the cannabis industry. So just tell me a little bit, or the audience, how you found your way into the cannabis industry and what that transition was like.
Yeah, I've always been a little bit of a cannabis fanatic, you could say. And so when I originally graduated from school, I had my risk management degree and started working in personal lines, and then moved over to Aon. And that's where our recruiter at AlphaRoot reached out to me and was like, are you interested in possibly coming to this more highly specialized market? Obviously, everyone's going to jump at that opportunity, especially if you've been working with Main Street risks that aren't as interesting or as complex. So coming into the cannabis industry, it was literally drinking from a fire hose. Every day was something new. And I still consider that to be true. We have new regulations going out at the state level, at least monthly. It's not what feels like weekly. So these operators are having to constantly evolve and determine how to properly ensure and stay within their state guidelines, make sure that they're managing risks on their end outside of insurance. And I think that AlphaRoot and other cannabis-specific insurance retailers are providing a huge service to this industry just because, I don't know, we've done program reviews for cannabis companies, and on the first review, you see a cannabis exclusion on the policy. And so I think a huge risk to cannabis operators are working with insurers and retailers that don't understand their risk. And so that's a gap that we're here to fill.
How do you think they end up in that situation of full-on paying for insurance, and then upon a very cursory read of the policy, of the insurance policy, you're like, oh yeah, right there. It excludes federally illegal companies. Shocker, because a lot of these insurance companies work with other large companies. But I guess, why do you think operators get in that point? Did their lawyer not read the fine print? Did they not read the fine print? Was it just a sales guy that was overzealous? What happens in those situations?
I think that cannabis operators understand the need for community right? I think they understand the need that working with people you trust is one of the most important things you can do. And so I think a lot of times these people have their friends, right? Who work at who work at a State Farm or an Aon even. And they're like, oh, I know somebody that does insurance. Let me call them. And then that person, trying to be a good friend, does the best they can. They just don't have the tools or technically the markets. There are a lot of markets that these standard carriers and retailers don't even have access to. So they don't know what they don't know. And I guess that's part of the reason why I wanted to be here today too. There are other options, right? There are people that understand your risk, understand the implications that come with coverage. And a lot of times these people are trusting their friends that have never worked with such a complex risk. So I think that gets people in trouble a lot, but also I don't want to throw stones because I would probably do the same thing if I was in that situation. Want to give my friend money, right? Want to help work with my friend. That's absolutely something I would do.
And elephant in the room, there's still a lot of the legacy mindset in the industry, and a lot of owners are still legacy to legit owners. And it's like, you exclusively work with people you can trust. And so like, you just carry this is what I've done for decades.
Mindset.
And you're like, now you can, because it's just not going to work. And it's the same with CPAs and accounting and finance. Like my construction company, I use this accounting firm and they keep the books, and I use that CPA firm. So I'll just use them. I've used them for a successful business for 2 decades. And then, they're good people with good intentions, but then they kind of get in a little over their head. Rightfully, it'd be like if I tried to take on musicians or entertainment artists to do their taxes, it's like I'd probably miss stuff because I'm not so well versed in the entertainment industry tax code.
Yeah.
But totally makes sense. Question that I kind of just thought of as you were telling me about, you had mentioned a risk management degree and then starting to work right out of school. Can you go to school for insurance? I didn't even know this. I thought it was just something people did after a while. I gotta go get my license and be good insurance. I didn't think it was like a bachelor's, a clear path to insurance. Like, about risk management as a degree in a career choice.
It's so funny because I went to school thinking I was going to be a financial analyst, that I was going to be a CPA, basically. I was going to finance and accounting as my degree. And then, dude, I took one accounting class and I was like, no, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, it's still accounting at the end of the day. It's fun because you're dealing with money and net worth people and like see right away, but it's still debits equal credits. It's very tedious. It's very black and white. I have a ton of ADDs. To me, it's almost therapy where it's like, nice. The debits equal credits. The income statement flows to the balance sheet. I can calm my little squirrel mind down and just try to make sure this flows. But yeah, it's not for everybody, for sure. What happened after accounting? What did you study then?
I took a freshman seminar class, and one of the fellows at my school had just started this degree path 3 years prior. So he came into my seminar class and basically did a lecture on gambling. It was essentially it. Would you gamble X to get Y? And the whole crux of the thing was like, yes, given certain parameters. And I loved the idea of that it's not this yes or no question. It's yes, but if this is true, then we might be able to say no. I find it so interesting also, the idea of insurance fitting into the risk management landscape, right? I think a lot of companies, their risk management starts and ends with insurance. Where if you're worried about insurance costs, we can talk about increasing your deductibles. We can talk about what are you willing to self-insure? Do you think you could handle a $50,000 loss? If so, why are you paying for a $5,000 deductible if you'd be willing to pay 10 times that? And I think that us in the insurance space, we obviously have a vested interest to get insurance on your books. And I think that there's a larger conversation we could be having around retaining risk, around transferring risk, and making sure that each company fully understands what can they actually retain from a risk standpoint. Are you willing to pay $500,000? And if so, what are we doing? Let's not transfer that risk. You obviously are willing to. So yeah, I can geek out about risk management all day, but yeah, it's more about insurance is why I'm here.
We'll weave it back in. It's my podcast. We'll talk about whatever we want to. So when we get to it, we get to it. Because it is more about transferring risk. And candidly, the people will get more it helps us to think how you guys think, because you guys are experts. And to your point, yes, the C-suite and the investors are like, I'm just trying to ensure my assets, my investment. Some of them think of it as more like risk. What's the risk of me losing this investment? But yeah, to your point, it's like it's all risk, and it's like you either transfer the risk to this company for this fee, or you keep the risk here for this fee. But it all has a cost. I guess where I was going with this, risk comes with a cost, and it's just and you don't always pay in cash. There's different ways to pay for it, but yeah, it comes with everything. So I guess, yeah, to help me understand a little bit selfishly, let's define some of these risks and coverages, because I'm guilty of it too. Of like, I just lump risk management into, let's just start with insurance, and then from there we'll get to capital. And it's more so, is the company viable? Is it profitable? Is it cash flow positive? But once we get there, then we can think of some other things. But those are kind of like the step ladder of start with insurance, then worry about operations. But honestly,
Yeah.
might come before insurance. But how do you think through risks? If you were to just define the term risks for business, and then how do you bucket the different coverages? Because I think everybody just thinks of it all as one amorphous monolith, to use your word, of like, it's insurance, it's risks, it's coverages. They don't even think of it in terms of different industries, like you had already mentioned earlier on. They don't even have access to industries. It's like, that's a level beneath our basic understanding. We just pay the insurance people and they make sure our assets are covered. So I guess just all that rambling to say, how would you define risks, and how would you define or bucket the different coverages, just to educate our audience?
Risk is such a broad term, right? In insurance, think of it, it's called a hazard. Okay. And a hazard is a loss that hasn't happened yet. Think there's fire hazard, where your building gets struck by lightning and your building catches on fire. Total loss. That's property insurance. And anything insured in your property or the building, if that's insured, that would be considered a claim, right? And everyone's always asking, how much is going to get paid out? Yada, yada.
Yeah.
It's so dependent on exactly what happened, where you are, what your policy says. So there's no way to determine how much would get paid out by just looking at a policy. You have to talk to an adjuster, and there's so much legalese around it that you really have to be careful about what you say whether or not something's going to get covered. And then you have to think about operational risks as well, right? Because that's like an act of God, a lightning striking your building, right? There's nothing you can do about that. But if you are operating, say you're a retail dispensary, and somebody comes in and they're buying something, and then they slip and fall on their way out, that's a risk to you. That's a hazard to you. That person, maybe they broke their neck, right? Maybe they tore an Achilles or something. You're going to pay out for that. Basically, it happened on your premises, on your watch. Maybe you had just mopped and there wasn't a sign up, right? We consider those little yellow signs, that's risk management. Those are safeguards, because it shows the person who's walking in your store, hey, don't go near this place because you might trip and fall or slip and fall. And so that's covering the operations, basically, say, from a safeguard perspective.
No, I totally get it. I'm just laughing because it's just like, it's this, from the reality, it's just, there's so much we need to do so the insurance companies don't have to pay out after we paid them so much money. And it's like, and I get it, you're a good person, but it's just like, you just work for a flawed company. And it's like, this is just such a ridiculous business model where they're like, how can I make sure I don't have to pay my customers out after they've trusted me and paid me money? You didn't have the yellow sign by the slippage, not covered. Go fuck yourselves.
And
oh my gosh.
And
I apologize for swearing. I'm not swearing at you, Griffin. I'm just swearing at the insurances.
I have the worst sailor mouth. My sister-in-law is like, dude, when my nephew gets sent home from school for saying curse words, I'm not even going to answer the phone. I'm going to make you call him back.
Just to break the fourth wall, what is it like for you? Because as a CPA, I was an auditor for a number of years, and like I had to link through just super difficult conversations. No one's happy when you ride in on your white horse. You're like, hey, I'm sorry. I know I'm in my mid-20s, but I need to make these decisions that are going to cost you tons of money. Can you help me? And then it's like, they definitely don't like you. You're on the third party looking in. And I'm like, dude, it's got to be worse being an insurance agent. So I guess on an emotional level, how do you handle these conversations? Do some of your customers like you? Do some of them not? Obviously, just even in sales and biz dev friendly conversations, it's easy to poke fun at insurance companies' greed. So how do you handle it?
I like to think of it, and I know this is going to sound so cliche, right? But
It's my podcast, cliche it up. Who cares?
when I originally got into insurance, like my first year, I was so excited because I was like, I'm going to be able to help people, right? I was working in personal lines and I'm like, you have a boat, you have a car, you need an umbrella policy, right? Because if you hit somebody and then you crash your boat, you're not going to have enough limit to pay out, right? And so I really felt like I was helping people. And then I went to Aon and I didn't feel that as much. And now I'm back here at AlphaRoot. And I honestly do feel like we are helping people because I don't think I would ever work for an insurance company, straight up. I don't think I would work for a carrier. I love being on the broking side because I'm the carrier's client, right? My AR pays them. So if they want my business, they got to be nice to me. And so I like sitting where I sit because I get to go to bat for my clients and like I have a little bit of leeway with them, with my carriers, because we have a relatively large book. We get a fair amount of business and we have some great relationships with other entities in the cannabis space that are sending us opportunities. So it's like, I feel like we have a little bit of leverage with some of these companies to ask them to throw us a bone. A lot of times on pricing, less on claims, because again, that's a contract thing.
That's fair. That's fair.
If we can get additional coverage for the same price, then hopefully the claim goes better, the inevitable claim that will come through. And so that's how I like to think about it. Obviously, that's not everything. That's not all the time.
Hey, no judgment here. I was an auditor. Trust me, I had to think for a lot of years before I was like, we're just taking their money and we just have to do this because we have leverage because they have a bank loan and they have to get an audit in order to keep the line of credit. And they have to get an audit in order to pay taxes. And so it's like you have very optimistic lenses. And then as reality sets in, the more that you learn, it's still valuable, but it's valuable because it's a compliance requirement for money and greed and not because we're like virtuistically making the world a better place. But we can do that outside of works.
We try.
We try. So sorry, I appreciate you hearing my side tangent and just breaking the wall. Hey, your insurance agent is a real person too. All right, be nice to him. Just let your opinion. Griffin's a really nice person. And so you brought up a cool point that I learned this hustle once I was getting into insurance more and more as well. What's the difference? And again, this is just because most owner operators don't really think through it at this level, but the difference between the brokers, the carriers, what's the difference? Because we always think we're just paying the carrier. And then it's like you learn that, oh no, you're dealing with a broker. They can go to different people, but that also creates sometimes where they don't actually know what all these three different carriers actually really do. And so then they can overpromise on coverage. And so that's where the carriers are always like, don't use brokers. They're idiots. Just come straight to the carrier. We're the ones that actually know what we cover. And so I guess just explain the difference and then the pros and cons of going with a broker versus going straight to the carrier for your insurance.
Definitely. So
conversations with all these different people, men and women, every quarter of, all right, I got to talk to another insurance person.
So
I get it.
So there are essentially three levels. So
I didn't even know there was a third level. And
so there's the level that I'm on, which is the retail broker. And these are people that are working directly with operators. So you as an operator, come to us and give us all the information we would need to go to market. Revenues, locations, product values, things like that. We get your information. Okay. I can go directly to a carrier, okay, or I can send it to a secondary broker, which is called a wholesale broker. So I'm a retailer, they're wholesalers, and wholesalers have access to different markets. So it's going to get a little in the weeds here, but walk with me.
We need to, though. This is a great millions of assets or millions of dollars worth of assets.
Carriers, which are the ones that are essentially writing your coverage.
They're the ones who pay out at the end of the day.
Because insurance can't be easy, bro, at all.
It just seems like there's additional layers. So there's additional greed, additional people can get paid. Like, honestly, we had insurance that was simpler before this, but go on. So who actually pays this? I'll add a fourth person to this game we're playing.
So a carrier, they work with writing companies. So they do something called reinsurance, and they reinsure the risk that they're writing on their books. So I write a policy directly with the carrier, okay?
Yeah.
the carrier receives the premium, okay? They send us commission, okay, for sending them business.
Makes sense. I get it.
That company then has a book of business written to specific guidelines, right? Under 5 million in revenue, only operating in Wisconsin, things like that. Only retailers. They have specific guidelines for what would fit in that book. And then they reinsure that with a secondary insurance company. And then, because the reinsurance is the one that actually insures it, because they have what's called treaties that determine what would fit in that book. Okay. And that's true across all carriers. Everybody has reinsurance. Everybody has
this existed outside of cannabis. It's not a cannabis punishment.
photos. Yeah, everybody has it.
And you got to remind that the owner operators, they always think things are just picking on cannabis. I'm like, dude, it's been this way before cannabis industry.
We're working within the framework. We are not creating a new framework for cannabis. Yeah. So wholesalers, sometimes carriers will not work directly with retail brokers, and they want a secondary wholesaler on it. And that usually comes when they have more and stricter underwriting guidelines. And the idea is that more eyes means more questions answered, basically, and more oversight for the carrier. So if the carrier writes something and they write it wrong, they put the wrong revenues, they don't include, they put some cannabis exclusion on a cannabis policy, right? The idea is that with an extra set of eyes, that is unable to happen. It's confusing, but basically, if you work with a retailer, you could be working with a secondary wholesaler, and then you're also obviously working with the carrier. But when claims happen, carriers all have third-party claims administrators, right? They have third-party inspectors. They have third-party auditors. The only thing that your insurance company is doing basically is writing that business, reinsuring it out. And then they contract out the claims handling, the inspections, the audits, third parties. So we have a lot of people come to us after we write a policy and then there's an inspection requirement. Then they're like, why is this random company reaching out to me? I thought Kinsale was reaching out to me. No, Kinsale contracts that work out. So you could be working with 10 different companies. It's pricey.
It's expensive, but it makes sense. It's insurance is one of those beautiful business models that's like, it's been around for hundreds of years. It's like banking and like accounting and finance, where it's like, it's been around for so long because it's wildly profitable, and it's just a bespoke business model that unless you're born into it or wildly wealthy, you can't just start an insurance company.
Exactly.
So they have a massive moat. And so it's like, you can become a retail broker, but you'll never become an actual insurance company. So anyways, I'll move on before I just get more angry about it. It's just a flawed system, and I don't think we can change it at this point in America.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's true across any company that I've worked for, because I used to work in multinational risks at Aon, and it was the same thing. So unfortunately, this is a worldwide. Yeah.
We ain't. So yeah, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, what country, insurance is a rich person's game.
Period.
So anyways, so back to cannabis, switching gears a little bit. So still federally illegal in the United States, which again is what gives a lot of this risk is more risky in cannabis, because it's like these insurance agents are already terrible people trying to screw you over. Now you add in we're federally illegal. Now they have even way more ways to not pay out. So I guess, how do you guys make sure you don't screw over your clients and not pay out? On the state to state is really where I'm going with this question. Like, how do you guys make sure each state is covered as best they can, given how many people are trying to not pay us out?
And I do want to specifically say, just for the viewers, the intent of coverage is always to pay out, right? The intent is to pay out. And I think we're
just for everybody. Griffin wants to pay out. Trust me. I know Griffin wants to pay out. AlphaRoot wants to pay out. It's all these, Illuminati type people that we know shall not be named that are trying to screw us over. But AlphaRoot's cool. Griffin's cool. Look about them.
Exactly. But I think that
it's out of the way.
with the federal illegality of it all, a lot of a lot of almost every policy has what's called an intrastate exclusion on it, meaning you cannot, like, nothing, your policy is null and void, basically, if you transport product over state lines, right? And so that's where they determine where. So let me go back.
Yeah, back up a little bit. Is your policy by state? Is that kind of how you got to do it?
No. If you operate in multiple states, you would not be able to, if you operate in Michigan and Wisconsin, you would not be able to move product in Michigan to Wisconsin. But we could cover both under the same policy, most likely, right? Like, the issue comes, and I feel like it creates more issues down the line where, like, without this interstate ability, you are forcing people to set up vertically within each state. So you have to have cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, and dispensaries all within the same state. So you're raising the bar for the investment required, basically. Because it's, if you want to grow in a certain state and you also want to sell in another state, you can't. So you have, like, right over the line. So you have to have a second dispensary in the same state. And I think that the risk is obviously not there. It wouldn't matter if we had a well-regulated market at the federal level. I think all of this comes back to federal legalization, right? We could talk about insurance all day, but, like, the only way that the issues with cannabis insurance are going to get fixed is if regulations are handed down from the top that allows globalization, allows interstate connectivity, because that's true for every other industry except for cannabis. I know that doesn't really answer your question, but I think everything comes back to legalization and not so much rescheduling, because I don't think rescheduling is going to do anything for the consumer. I think it's going to do a lot for some operators, right? They're operating in the medicinal space. But yeah, just, it seems so obvious, right? I thought when I started in cannabis 4 years ago that we were 5 years out from federal legalization. And now I know that we're probably 10 years out from federal legalization, if it ever even will come down the pipe.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So it'll continue to be a state by state thing where, essentially, to your point, like, just to summarize what I think, following your train of thought, every state is its own market. You license in the state, you build your facility, you can't sell product. But I was talking from just a business perspective. There's many businesses that have assets in multiple states just because they manufacture here, they have a distribution center there, maybe they have some retail stores there. So in cannabis, if you're an MSO and you have operations in Oregon, Washington, and now you're expanding into Minnesota, do you need to get a new policy by state, or could you get a policy for your business and it covers your assets in the 3 different states that your business operates in? That was kind of...
It's like a carrier by carrier thing. And so some carriers, if they operate in each state, maybe, but there are, like, it's like rules and regulations. I'd like to say, yes, of course, you're going to be able to get a policy. I can think of 2 carriers that would definitely do that, right? But then they have other guidelines, right? If you're a manufacturer, I know one of those carriers couldn't do volatile extraction, right? So it's yes, but, which is the answer to every insurance, where it's like, I want to say yes across the board, but there would be that one operator that comes in and they're doing butane extraction or something, and then I'm unable to get them that policy. So
doing the exact same business just in 3 different states, then to your point, it would come down to, hey, we insure these states, but for whatever reason, we don't like insuring businesses that do the same thing in that state. So you'd have to use a different carrier. Is that kind of the situation?
Probably. And it's less about the regulations and more about the state by state departments of insurances and where our carriers have filed rates, because each state has different rules around the rates that you're allowed to use. There's some, I learned this in my insurance degree. There's some states that you have to file your rates first and then you're allowed to use them. There's some states that you start using them and then you file them with the DOI. And so it takes a minute to get into new states because you have to follow their rules to be able to use your posted rates. But once you're in, the work's done. So I think a lot of our carriers are in almost every state where cannabis is legal. And we do have, I know that Alaska and Hawaii are really hard to place coverages for because they're not in the lower 48. So it's easier to write something in Wisconsin, right? You have more risk history, more loss history to show what your rate should be.
Makes sense.
Trying to make it make sense.
But it's all right. Long story short, audience, that's why you call Griffin AlphaRoot.
I'm sorry.
You don't need to talk to all the different courier agencies. Let them talk to them on your behalf. Trust me, I'm a service provider as well. You could go to a lot of these other companies, but just go to us and let us just figure it out for you.
Why do you struggle?
We know we know how to open up a state. Okay, no, that makes sense. Let's switching gears a little bit to policy, and I'll get you out of here. I want to respect your time. But so you live in a state similar to myself where there's no medical, no adult use, but yet we serve the cannabis industry and have for years exclusively. So I guess from your perspective, what was it like getting into the cannabis industry, living where you live in the Carolinas?
It's so weird, honestly. People ask what I do, and I'm like, oh, I just do insurance. And then they're like, oh, what kind? And then I'm like, oh, for cannabis businesses. And they kind of pause. And they're like, what? Cannabis insurance? What even does that mean? What would you need to insure for a cannabis business? I'm like, anything that you would insure for a normal business. The operation risks, the management risk, the financial risk, all of it. And so I have become the person that my friends are reaching out to when they want to try some hemp derivative stuff that's available in North Carolina. So they're like calling me as they walk into the smoke shop, asking me, what would you recommend, yada. And for any, I guess everybody knows, but I'm like, I always say THCA over D9, D8, any of the derivative stuff, just because the dosing on D8, D9 is there's no regulation, there's no testing. You don't know how much like in milligrams are in your specific edible that you're eating. And I've had bad experiences. I know my friends have had bad experiences. And so it's something that I tell everybody to stay away from now if they can. But it's weird, honestly. But it is fun.
Trust, please be honest.
It is fun because going out to Vegas and stuff from MJ Biz and like flying up to Chicago and like meeting people that live in the cannabis world. I feel like I'm like meeting rock stars. I'm like, oh, I'm from Podunk outside of Charlotte, and I really can't keep up with them when I'm there, but lots of fun. I don't think I'll ever leave the cannabis industry if I can avoid it, at least.
For sure. Same here. I think I explained it to, I feel like we're probably similar in age, but it's like I was too young for the tech industry and like the boom that the internet created. Like the internet didn't exist, then it came around, and then all of a sudden e-commerce was a thing, softwares, tech companies. But I'm like in the prime of my career for like the birth of the cannabis industry, and like Minnesota literally didn't exist. And then they didn't have legalization, and they legalized, raised money, built real facilities, making real products, sold to real consumers. And so it's like super cool to see it happen in real time. This is unique. And then it's like the business models are changing, the licensing types are changing, the players are changing. And so I feel very fortunate as well to be a part of this like movement as it's happening for the first time, one time. It's only going to happen once.
Exactly. And there are so many young people, which I find enthralling. Like it's just walking into a cannabis event and the oldest person there is like 65. And I'm like, that is really cool, especially being from insurance, where I'm like, I never found people at insurance events. And then I get to hang out with a bunch of cool people in Vegas. It's awesome.
Man, it's funny. It's the same in accounting. Like I was a CPA for a number of years, and even in finance, it's still cliche-ly a bunch of old white dudes. And so it's like, yeah, and suits. I try to think of it's not so much the cannabis industry, but it's a startup industry. And I think that's what's amazing too, because like insurance is similar to accounting. Like insurance companies and accounting firms have been around like for decades, multiple generations. Like our clients tend to be these like multi-generational companies. So you just get used to dealing with old companies, and then all of a sudden you're like thrust into this new world where like we're 10 years old, we're an established company. I'm like, dude, you're a baby, but this is lasting. Let's get to work. We're going to build these companies. So anyways, no, I'm right there with you. I think it's a very interesting time, and I'll be in Chicago for Ignited coming up here in June. So I like some of these events. All right. Last question to get you out of here. Looking forward to the future over the next 3 years. I try to keep it no more than that. What has you concerned and what has you excited about the cannabis industry, insurance, hemp? If you loop it all in there, anything's fair game.
I think that within the next 3 years, we can expect actual rescheduling to be handed down. I think that it will cause a lot of issues because we've seen the federal government shirk off the responsibility for the cannabis industry to the state level, right? And now it being rescheduled on the federal level is going to cause it doesn't mean that they're going to have the regulations in place to be able to deal with the rescheduling, right? Just because they move it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, it does not mean that the DEA and the FDA are going to know what to do with that. So I'm excited about the opportunity of the federal government creating a framework prior to handing down the rescheduling, the nuts and bolts of it, right? Because they've already handed it down, but actually do it, right? I think that I honestly expect there to be a lot of confusion with operators on the ground regarding it as well. And I think that makes me a little nervous because I think that the large MSOs, people who are doing $20, $30 million a year, they got no problem figuring out how to go through these new loops, they're going to know how to game the system in a way that's going to benefit them. And I worry about the smaller mom and pop shops that are already getting bought up at record numbers. We've seen so much M&A in most states, and New York is a mess, bro. Oh my gosh. I keep hoping that New York is going to turn around, but most operators we speak to operating in Manhattan or honestly any of the boroughs struggling, and a lot of them are going through and being acquired now, and that is the antithesis, I think, of what is good for the cannabis industry. I think what makes the cannabis industry different than a lot of even cigarettes, right? It's different than tobacco because the small man still matters, right? The industry is young enough where mom and pop shops still hold a large number of the licenses in each of these states. And
the revenue. Yeah.
I worry that's going to dwindle in these coming years. And I think I said it before, I'll say it one more time. Well-regulated market at the federal level is one of the only things that's going to help combat against that. Because if there is a framework where somebody who's sitting on the border, right? Because I live in Charlotte, which is basically on the border of North and South Carolina. If you could grow in North Carolina with a ton of farmland and then sell in South Carolina, you can double your revenue essentially, right? Double the amount of people you're
economies of scale. Yeah. Business displays out.
You're not going to be able to afford anything, and everything's getting more expensive, and oil and yada. And so at the end of the day, I do worry about these smaller operators. And I think that's going to be, one of the things we see possibly hurting the most over these next 3 or 4 years, unfortunately.
All righty. I don't disagree with you.
A bummer, but a bummer.
I like to end on a high note, but I'll send us off on a high note. I appreciate the candidness, Griffin, because it's like the Schedule 3. I always just put on I only see things through accounting and finance lens, but yes, it lowers taxes because it's no longer a federal Schedule 1 illegal substance. Free cash flows goes up. It's good for AlphaRoot. That free cash flow, now I can use that to get better insurance and not have to complain about it so much, as well as pay other service providers and pay back our investors rightfully so they can get a positive return on their investment. But it's not going to save everybody. People think it's going to make an unprofitable, a fundamentally unprofitable cannabis company profitable, and it's not.
Exactly.
Your unit economics need to be profitable. You only pay taxes on your profits. So until you're profitable, Schedule 3, Schedule 1 doesn't really affect you. You're not profitable, you don't pay taxes. Regardless if you want to have the ghost income conversation. Anyways, I really agree with you. I think it's going to take a while, but just in summary, because I know this is a unique podcast, we're trying to make insurance as entertaining as we could. I apologize if I came off a little rough sometimes. Like I said to the audience, AlphaRoot are the good guys, Griffin's the good guys, but we got to work with them to make sure we're buttoned up. So when we actually need to get a payout, which definitely happens. We have a client who had a fire in 2023, had to get it rebuilt throughout 2024, and throughout 2025 was just starting to get operational. And thank God he had good insurance and we were able to get a settlement. Naturally, not as much as we effing should have gotten, but it was detrimental to the whole facility. So if we didn't have insurance, it would have essentially just wiped out the investment of all of our owners. And so insurance does happen. I have a case study that I just lived through. It's definitely useful.
Perfect.
So work with AlphaRoot and Griffin to make sure we're like properly insured, because there's so many ways where you can not be covered. But that being said, thanks again for your time, Griffin. Where can people find you or AlphaRoot, or reach out if they have any insurance questions?
Go to alpharoot.com, we have our online quoting tool on there. You can reach out to me, Griffin at alpharoot.com. And yeah, we look forward to working with your people. And we're more than happy to do a program review. That's one of our favorite things to do for new or prospective clients. If you're concerned about the coverage you might have, whether or not it would respond, yada, we're more than happy to take a look and just tell you peer-to-peer what's going on and if it's good coverage for you or not.
Review, does it cost me anything, or can I just send you my policy and be like, dude, just take a quick look?
That's a great question. I'm not a salesperson, but I know that when I was working on the sales side, it was free. I think it's free.
Well, if you call Griffin, maybe it will be free.
I don't care. I don't need to get paid. It's fine. No, yeah, reach out to me and we'll get it done for you. No problem. But I really appreciate you having me on, Ray. This has been a lot of fun. And yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your weekend.
You as well.